Oh, that's Parker. We can't hear you.
Wow, that's
Oh, no.
hilarious. That is
Oh
perfect.
no! Oh no!
Oh my god. Okay, let's try again.
One more time.
Can you hear me now? That was amazing. Hi guys. Welcome to the second episode of Highlight Heroes. I'm supposed to do the intro and my mic went out. Hi guys. That's how technology works. So, this is a mini painting interview show that Josh and I do. We're here today with Commune. So, super
Hello.
exciting. Really fast, I'm going to give you guys the rundown on our schedule for this week, and then we get to talking. So, we have our regular scheduled campaigns. Rolling Tides is on Friday night at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and Saturday morning, afternoon, 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, you can catch Conundrum Company. Then we also, on Sunday, have a special one-shot. Commune, you want to tell us about that?
Yeah, so Sunday, May 31st at 5 p.m. Central, 6 p.m. Eastern Time, I'm going to be running a one-shot titled The Madhouse of Tasha's Kiss. It's a psychological horror adventure I found on DM's Guild. Definitely saw a lot of recommendations for it, so I wanted to run it, and I got some cool players. Got the D&D mom, Dankles, Chunky D&D, and Miss Gabriella, and it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm ready to scare people.
And I've gotten to experience firsthand Alex DMing, and it is just the best. Like, he's a really good storyteller and world builder, and does some fantastic characterization. So I'm looking forward to it.
I tried.
Excited to watch that, and super excited that I'm not playing in it because I don't do horror. I was like, oh, how fun! Exactly the kind of video games I hate.
Just, oh no!
Oh no! Oh no! All right, so guys, that's our schedule for this week. What are we painting today, guys? You want to tell us, Alec? What are you painting?
Sure. I am painting Dritz Doerden. Wow, that's very washed out. He is a very popular D&D character, and I'm ready to mess him up fantastically.
Perfect.
Okay.
Perfect.
Iconic.
Josh, what are you painting?
I am painting
Iconic.
a wall. So I have some terrain. This is actually from the Warhammer Citadel line of miniatures, and I've already primed it, so I'm going to be doing some detail work in here. We're going to put some grunge on the vents, and we're going to paint some wire working pretty colors, so should be interesting. Yeah. Parker, what about you?
Oh, I guess I have a theme now, but I'm painting this little blue dragon wormling. So I took what I did last time and I made it an actual mini because I went to the comic book store and supervised. So
we're gonna see BIMs, is what we're gonna see.
BIMs, tiny BIMs.
Tiny BIMs! Yay!
I'm ready for it.
Tiny BIMs.
Well, I guess that segues into my first question, right?
Yep.
All right. So, Alec, our first question for you is, what's your mini painting experience?
Zilch, nada, nothing. I am ill prepared for this show.
So this is where this is your first mini painting experience, and you're doing it with us?
Yes, this is my first attempt to even try to paint a mini.
Well, we're honored that you're here with us.
Thank you.
Parker's
So
Parker's
we're
the
on
pro.
the same. Nope.
Yeah.
Nope. Alec and I are on the same page because we're both tackling our first actual tiny babies. So I'm here to make you feel better about yourself as we go.
I appreciate it.
So
And Josh is here to tell us how to do things.
Yeah.
So where are you starting? Like, are your minis primed yet? Like, do you have a base coat of paint on them? Like, where are we starting?
No.
No. Cool. Okay, Parker,
I have no base.
Okay. Not primed either?
I'm primed.
You are
But-
primed.
That's it.
So, what kind of you got like a starter kit, right, Alec?
Yeah, so I got the Nulzur's Marvelous Pigments Underdark paint set. So a lot of kind of spooky purples, deep grays, blues. Right.
Now-
So we're gonna do a bit of a palette swap.
correct me if I'm wrong, but the wizard lines of minis often come pre-primed. So here's a tip for many of our venture mini painters is that I talk about priming a lot. Priming is critically important to miniature painting. It's something that you need to do. Parker is primed and ready to go. Well done, Parker. You need to prime your mini a single color. That's what adheres the paint. This is probably pre-primed. Is that right, Alec?
This is pre-primed. Yep. So that saved my butt.
There you go. So that is something that comes at, you'll see it on the box. A lot of the Wizard minis nowadays say pre-primed, which is really good. Priming, the easiest way to prime is to do it with a spray paint. And that means going outside, which none of us want to do, putting on masks, all that kind of messing around, right? So I'm glad to hear that it's primed. So it looks like you can essentially begin by, both of you are on the same place where you're going to be applying base paints, right? So essentially you're going to start blocking out areas of color with that base tone. So what do you got? Color you got, Parker? What is that?
Calidor Sky by Citadel.
Okay.
It's my blue base.
Beautiful. Now, Alec, I might recommend, what do you think the largest body of color is going to be on the mini? Maybe the cloak?
Yeah, that was where I was going to start initially, was the cloak, which I mix a bit of Xanathar blue, some putrid slime, and some lich blue to get a nice kind of mossy green color.
This is that artist background coming in already, huh?
Yeah, college paid off.
All right, well, it looks like we're ready to start. So, Parker, I think you're up, boss.
All right. So, Alec, what's your... how'd you get into D&D? Tell us that story.
So, initially got into D&D, like a lot of people during the resurgence of the game, caught some Critical Role, and had the forethought of, me and my friends could totally do this. We could play this exact game and it would go perfectly the first time around. I found out that wasn't the case. But yeah, so Critical Role was my kind of introduction to D&D.
And so what was it about Critical Role that really kind of drew you into it, just to build upon that question before I ask my other question?
Yeah, I think it's the camaraderie, right? You see these people playing this game, and you're like, they are just friends, and they are just enjoying their company together. And even while watching it, I forget that they're on a stream, right? Like, I feel like I'm kind of peering in on people at their private home table, playing a game, and I'm just happy to be a part of it. And so I think the idea of wanting to create that with my friends and kind of build that genuine moment, or like build those genuine moments that I'd seen on Critical Role, was something that I felt like I wanted to do with my close group of friends.
Oh man, that's a beautiful answer. Okay. So you kind of told us how you got into D&D. What's your favorite class to play in D&D?
I've played D&D maybe 5 times. Like 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons. The bulk of my 4.5 years has been behind a DM screen.
So you are the eternal DM. You are
I am
ever caught doing dungeon mastering.
Yeah. Yes, but the few times I have played, I have really enjoyed playing Paladin. I like being a tank. And then Monk I've played once or twice and have enjoyed the time doing that.
So what I'm getting from this is, like, you were inspired to play D&D after watching Critical Role, and you just took the dive and took up the mantle of Dungeon Master and did it, right?
Oh yeah.
I mean, that's something that I've said before, and I think we get that question a lot from folks of, like, you know, how do I get into D&D? And a lot of the time, it requires that person, that Alec, to commit to that role.
Yep.
Don't be worried about that much,
You have to find somebody who's willing to put up with you first.
Parker, you've said that many times before.
I have. It was Josh, by the way. Josh was willing to put up with me.
People who enjoy basking in your presence, which is what I get to do.
Perfection, yeah. That was good.
Well, and I had the luxury of starting to DM for like my core group of friends, so people that I've known for the better part of a decade. So we had all kind of, we grew up playing ninjas in the background, kicking each other a bit too hard, and like playing video games together. And I just felt like D&D and role playing games and building a world as a cohesive unit was the natural progression of that.
That's so true. Oh, that's awesome.
So
Cool.
yeah.
Okay, so I know you said that you're the eternal DM, but this is a particular question because we pretty much anybody that watches this should know that Josh has a favorite race from D&D. Do you have a favorite race, either to like make your NPCs or like to play? Do you have a favorite race in D&D?
Favorite race. I think when it comes to the home game I'm operating now, I've spent a lot of time focusing on like drow culture and kind of upending it and making it different from, they're just a bunch of evil tyrannical elves. I kind of wanted to take that stigma out of it. So I think I really enjoy the drow race and like what they bring to the elven culture and how they change the dynamic between a good and evil race.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So I think drow's a favorite.
I really love that, the like DM's perspective of turning some like assumed things on its head is always kind of a delight to get to play, right? Now I need you.
Well,
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
No. I want to hear your answer.
Well, because I was just going to say that the idea of the quote unquote evil races is just such like a shallow minded idea. To think that every orc you're going to run into is the big, hulking monster, and that every drow is going to be this kind of conniving, killer is just, it's something I don't want to put myself on. I want to kind of think past that and build characters that are characters before they're their race.
That's
Really
awesome.
I think that's the.
That applies to real life too, guys.
Yes.
Oh yeah,
That's beautiful.
definitely.
Now, before we go on to the next question, though, I do need you to just repeat the following phrases.
Oh my god.
Just
Okay.
before. So, the best race
The best race
in Dungeons and Dragons
in Dungeons and Dragons
is dwarves.
you can
are
you can nail it.
dwarves.
Done. Okay, cool. That's all I needed.
Right.
Are you gonna have a compilation at the end? Just
Yeah, I
like
was gonna say
we're gonna interview all these people. You're just gonna make a compilation of every person we interview saying that phrase.
I've got Sarah. Now I've got Alec. It's
I
just
saw
it's
the
just
dwarves.
the dwarves. Hey, that's a pretty good dwarf accent. You're a
Thanks.
master. So kind of next time you get to play, what
Yeah.
class do you want to try out? What are you noodling in your noggin? What are you thinking?
Sure. I've had a couple ideas for I've seen a lot of people playing the hex blades. So I think that would be fun, but maybe hard, right? So I think either a warlock of some degree, or maybe a fighter gunslinger, because I like the idea of gunslingers in D&D. Just very cool.
Now, when you say fighter gunslinger, what kind of like? Are you thinking a specific like battle master? Or are you thinking Eldritch Knight? Like, what kind of subclass?
So I'm thinking the Matt Mercer, where the fighter subclass is gunslinger.
Is gunslinger? Okay, the
Yep.
actual legit full blown
So, yeah,
Percy subclass.
Percy subclass.
Percy's so good.
Mm-hmm. That's sick. Okay. What about the
'Cause I'm not-
hexblade? Oh, sorry.
I said because I like the idea of playing a ranged character, or like adding some sort of range to a party dynamic, but I'm just not a fan of rangers. So Just
Leave
I don't know
now.
why.
I liked you, Alec, but I don't know.
I'm sorry. I've never been very drawn to Ranger, so I think Gunslinger would be my natural progression for that.
See, and if I have a favorite race, Parker has a favorite class, and you just
Is it
betrayed
Ranger?
her. Yeah.
Is it Ranger and Bard? But like, if I were to be if I were to be someone in D&D, that would be my multi-class.
It's a Ranger.
It's a Ranger Bard.
Ranger
yeah,
Bard.
yeah, that's what I am.
Which is amazing.
It's fine. I'll forget you said that. It's totally fine.
Okay.
I also enjoy gunslingers, so it's totally fine. So,
There we go.
so I know you said that you were like kind of reinventing the drow like culture in D&D. If you were to play another game, or if you were working on another like world building thing, what's the next race you think you would focus on? Is there another one that you want to like rewrite, or is there one that you really want to play because you like how it's written?
I think, like in a DM standpoint.
Either or.
Oof. Yeah, I'd say possibly human. I think humans give a lot to D&D, but I feel like they're very lost in translation. So they don't really feel like a natural part of the world to me. And I feel like giving them something that would rope them in and make them feel like a part of the ecosystem would kind of be something I'd want to do. Because it just feels like, oh, you need the human insert, so put the humans in there. But I'd want to give like a more concrete reason as to why they're there, if that makes sense.
That's a damn good answer.
Really good point. Honestly, like, I'm definitely that person that always is just like, why? My boyfriend likes to play humans in fantasy games.
Yeah.
And my constant thing is just like, why do you want to play as you? Like, because,
right,
there are all these magical, wonderful characters. And then, as far as, I'm not a DM, but, like, as far as, like, that goes, when you're looking at world building, like, why are humans still there evolution-wise? And, like, why would they have, like, had all these things when there's races that live longer and like do more magical things like innately?
Well, and it also kind of takes and it kind of takes away from those other races too, right? Where it's like, you know, the human in D&D is kind of seen as the everyman. Like they get a bonus to every stat. They are really versatile, which is good in a way, but there should be that niche that a human can fill. You know, there should be something that makes you want to go, okay, for this build, I really need to play a human. It makes the most sense. Or I'm really interested to discover, you know, human lore in X, Y, or Z. You know, just something that kind of draws you to that race.
Yeah, that's fair, because all too often as a DM, you experience the person who wants to play the human is either A, self-inserting, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with doing so. Like that's we're all doing that in D&D because, you know, that's amazing. But a lot of the time, like, that's the most direct route to self-insertion. Or you hear the opposite, which is, I want to roleplay a human because it's a challenge to, like... It's like, I have friends who, like, play these very diverse human beings because that's the challenge. Like, they want to be as ridiculous as possible with it to knock it out of that peg. And it would be nice to see it as a part of a living, breathing world a little more. I always appreciated Warhammer lore for that, because they're essentially, like, humans are besieged in a lot of that. Like, they're a race that's almost carrion on the world. Like, they procreate quite quickly compared to the other races, and then they kind of... I like those sort of adjustments, those changes to the D&D world. I like to see that.
Yeah.
That's cool. Good answer. So... You kind of highlighted on classes you want to try, but what's your least favorite class to play?
I think...
Or like DM approach. What's your least favorite class to have somebody play?
Ooh, that's a
Rogue.
good question. Yes.
Either
Rogue
one.
any day of the week. If I'm DMing at a table and this is not to throw shade or slights at anybody that does play a rogue.
I'm right.
You have to play. I'm right here. You have to play a rogue in a way that doesn't detract from everybody else's fun.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like there are a lot of players, and that definitely kind of bleeds into the power fantasy way of playing D&D. Which is, people do that, and that is what it is. But I've had a lot of instances at my table where someone plays a rogue and kind of play into that archetype, and it is kind of folly to everybody else's experience at the table. And so that's my 2 cents on that.
The rogue tends to lend into that like lone wolf RP fantasy too, right?
Splitting from the party, kind of like taking from everybody else's, and it could totally be like a player issue versus a class issue, But from experience, that's where I've had the most issues at the table.
I think it's that it attracts a certain type of player. I think the class is very good and can be explored in phenomenal ways, and is very there's a lot of cool stuff to do there. I love Rogue.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right.
And I find it that people find it very easy to min-max whilst playing rogues, and that is some of the most frustrating experience I've had. Are people min-maxing and just kind of taking the brunt of combat, and especially with newer players at the table, where they don't necessarily know how to make an optimal build, or what that even means.
Right. And then they see this rogue roll in and do 4d6 of sneak attack damage.
Destroy everything right off the bat, and then that's just like, oh no, what do I do? Because then it just becomes repetitive, right?
Yeah.
The rogue comes in, does 30 to 40 points of damage in a turn, and the thing's dead in 2 rounds of combat, and nobody else gets to really do anything.
Yeah.
So.
Very interesting. Right. I think that's my question, Parker.
Yeah, same sort of thing. You can answer DM-wise or you, but is there a least favorite race? I know you said you're redeveloping Drow, but is there another race that sits strangely with you whenever you have to DM?
This one is a bit controversial. People get mad when I say this.
Okay.
I feel like gnomes. I feel like gnomes and halflings should be the same race.
Oh. Huh.
I don't know why I feel that way, but I feel that way. So in my homebrew world, not that if somebody gave me a reason why they wanted to do it, and it made sense, I'll make it work and I'll do it. But the way I kind of play my home game now is you can take the stats from gnome or the sub race characteristics and throw them and just call it a halfling.
See, and Alec and I have had this conversation before, and we have we have a similar perspective. But to me, I like gnomes, and I find halflings to be flavorless. And so, I feel like you should just keep dwarves and gnomes and do away with halflings. And so there's this, that's, I kind of,
we see each other, but from the opposite end of the pool.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, oh.
Yeah.
But it's interesting to, I don't know, I like certain fantasies surrounding the gnomes. And I think it comes from being a Warcraft, or a World of Warcraft player. Because they're very unique in that space. But there are no halflings, so...
Yeah.
That's a really good question. And a really good answer.
Yeah, it was a good question.
So how did you get into, just as a general broad question, how did you get into D&D content creation? Tell us a little bit about that.
I don't know. It was, I think the idea for the podcast kind of came just because like conversations around D&D just came so naturally in like my personal life with like my friends.
Mm-hmm.
So I needed an outlet for it because it was getting to the point where they're just like, Alec, I don't want to talk about D&D anymore. That's all we talk about. We need something else to talk about. And I'm just like, oh shit, I'm kind of like drowning everybody in my nerdy hobby. How do I get this out? And then the idea of the podcast came in, and I was like, well, let's do that. So I started interviewing DMs I knew in person and reaching out to people in the D&D community to just kind of, talk about their experiences as dungeon masters and how it related to my experience, and hopefully at the end of the day, build this kind of essentials kit on how to start being a dungeon master. Take the things that we've talked about on the podcast and implement it into your own personal game, your own table. So yeah, I think that's where it started. But
I did not know that origin story, and I absolutely adore it. Like, your excitement was so much that you had to like find a release. That makes me incredibly happy.
I needed the outlet.
Tell folks a little bit more about your podcast series and like that kind of like, because we didn't give folks context of that. You know what I mean? Like.
Yeah, no. So Commune, the DM's Essentials Kit is a podcast where I sit kind of one-on-one with DMs that I know in person or DMs that I've met through the community, and we just kind of go through each of our personal experiences and kind of find differences, similarities, and hopefully at the end of the day find that thing that helps somebody get started DMing. So, I started talking with friends, and then as I got deeper into the community, even though I'm still fairly shallow in the ocean that is the D&D community, like reaching out to people, like Lily Tran, who's a great D&D creator. We were friends, and it's been great seeing everybody's perspective on the game and just kind of seeing how everybody approaches it and why they want to play it.
And having listened to the podcast, you really do capture that too. Like when you listen to the podcast, every single conversation is incredibly different, and yet touches on some like things that are uniquely D&D but similar, and it just kind of shows like the different ways to approach D&D. Like you really nailed that. So
I appreciate that. Yeah, and that was one thing that was like, I wasn't sure how that translation was going to go. Unlike talking to people about the game and wondering if I was putting myself into a trap of having the same conversation. But like, I think like I asked the same question over and over again, and it was just the intro question of like, how'd you get into D&D? What got you started? And then the conversation would just flow so naturally and become its own entity that like, yeah, it's crazy to think how different every conversation I had was.
Because interviewing's hard. Like I sit here right now, Parker and I think Parker would agree, right? Like it's a skill, man, and you do a really good job of it.
I appreciate it. It's definitely a challenge on occasion, but what the end product is definitely very gratifying.
Well, those of you watching, please, this is me plugging my friend, but go check out Commune's work. It's available on Spotify, SoundCloud, right? Like all the links are on your Instagram.
Yeah, so everything's on the Instagram. We go through Anchor, so we are pretty much everywhere: Spotify, iTunes, Pocket Cast, Google Play Store, anything like that. So if you want to find it, you really can.
It's very good. It's definitely worth it.
This is me plugging my other friend. Josh is on an episode.
He is episode 8.
I listened to it.
If you want to hear me fangirl awkwardly about Sean and Parker, that's the episode to go watch.
Like a little, just a little bit before.
The Mr. Shikadance?
The Mr. Shikadance.
Just a little bit before we were friends. Just like a tiny, like before we were super close. It was just a little bit.
It's
for
great.
for chat who's asking, it's Commune, the DM's essential kit. Right?
Yep, I'll type it in chat.
Thanks, Alec. Alex, sending it
Oh,
your
yeah.
way, guys, so that we can sit here and paint our minis.
We can do the thing, which I am doing, struggling.
How is it going, friends? How are we doing? Parker, you say struggling?
I've definitely hit parts of his wings that I wasn't supposed to hit with this color. Because I wasn't being as careful as I should have been with this tiny little brush.
Okay.
So
Well,
I'm
you
gonna
can just
have
go back
to,
over it, right?
yeah, I'm gonna have to just decide how I'm gonna fix that. But he's doing okay. He's got a little body so far, just in his
Yeah,
little
cons-
base coat,
The color's
base
good.
coat body.
the,
Oh, that is
I think
pretty.
the cape is going okay.
You guys
I
are
like that
killing
color.
it.
So
That's
I'm gonna
great.
start moving on to their armor now.
I've got my metallics in place on all the pipe work.
Ooh,
We're getting there.
fancy.
Yeah.
Feel like I'm like gonna have to go buy minis as we continue the show, and Josh is just going to continue to pull minis from like hiding places in his home.
I'm
Just
saving
so
one.
many. That is disposal.
I'm saving one, and I might pull it out for our next session. It's the TARDIS. I have the TARDIS to paint. So
Sir,
Right.
yeah, should be fun. That'll be a neat one.
that's amazing.
But there is a massive
I love
stockpile of them. You're right, Parker.
I'm thoroughly excited about it. So, Alec, I know we're talking a lot about like everything D&D, but what is your biggest hobby outside of D&D? Do we have one of those?
Biggest hobby? Probably not. Not recently, at least. I mean, I think the last couple years I have really gotten kind of deep into storytelling. So, kind of doing my own short story and building them into something. I wrote, after I graduated high school, I wrote a short story. It was my attempt at a novel. I got 700 pages, and then the computer that I was writing it on shit the bed. So I lost everything. So I am attempting to kind of start that up again and see where I want to take that and what I want to change. So writing and fans. So reading comics, watching the Marvel movies, and drawing big buff dudes is a hobby.
Drawing big buff dudes.
Drawing big buff dudes.
Okay. Let's see. This is. So you've recently kind of like started growing your TikTok presence, and you're on there a lot, and you've been doing a really good job. Your content is a lot of fun. Like, what kind of?
I appreciate it.
Yeah, man. What kind of tips do you have as someone who's just kind of starting to get traction in that space? Like, what have you found helps you as a TikTok creator?
What helps me is not staying complacent to my first idea. I think I initially think that an idea is funny or will do well, and then I kind of want to push myself past that, because I think, especially when you're jumping into something new and trying something different, you'd never want to start off comfortable. So kind of taking that first idea where I'm like, okay, yeah, this I think is funny, and I want to try that, but being like, maybe I'll try something else. Maybe I'll kind of workshop the idea harder or think on it a little longer, and then kind of something else comes, and usually the video does okay.
That's a very author-style answer. I've actually never thought of that before.
Because it's just like being kind of. Comfortable. I said it decently enough the first time, but being comfortable kind of leads to complacency, and I don't want to do that right off the bat. Creating content, like I'm comfortable. Let me just sit there and keep doing what works.
Okay, so challenging yourself through that process.
Yeah, or like just not taking the low-hanging fruit of like the first idea I have.
Oh, that's really good advice.
Doing something different. Yeah.
And your TikTok is Commune Podcast, right?
Yeah. At Commune Podcast, no underscores or anything like that. Just the 2 words.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing advice with our community.
Of course. Yeah, I love that.
This is more a question that I had personally, and I think that the chat will enjoy knowing your answer. Because
Sure.
this is one of my favorite things that you do on your Instagram. What's your favorite D&D themed drink that you've made? Because you do the D&D drinks one.
Yep. So we do the monthly Commune homebrews, where we make a drink that is specific to D&D. So it can be based off of like a class, a race, a spell. We've done 4 so far, so we've been doing it for 4 months. I think my favorite one is the Bardic Inebriation.
That name's
just because the wordplay, the wordplay on that's just real good, and it's also just delicious. So I have the ingredients. So it's an ounce vodka, 0.5 ounces blue curacao, 1 ounce of cran-cherry juice, 1 ounce of cran-raspberry juice, 2 ounces of blood orange seltzer, and 2 ounces of black and blueberry seltzer.
Okay.
And then
That
to top
sounds
it off,
amazing.
we'll do a handful of blackberries and raspberries to let that soak in and just look pretty.
So the name, how did the name get applied to that specific drink? Is there like a specific story behind that?
No, just me thinking very hard about it, because I wanted to do a take on bards, just because it was February, so it was like Valentine's Day and the whole, the
whole
lovable
bard
bards. Yeah. And I was thinking about doing something pertaining to like charm person or something along the lines of a spell, but then I was just kind of reading over the bard class section of the player's handbook, and then I just saw Bardic Inspiration, and I'm like, there's something there. So I stared at it for about another maybe 20 minutes, and then Bardic Inebriation kind of came to my brain. I was like, yeah, that's it.
I love that. That's so good.
It's just so goofy, and it just makes sense.
Definitely does. Oh my gosh.
I think that was like our last planned question. So chat, I know I've seen at least one question come in. I'm going to look it up right now. But if you guys have questions for Alec, go ahead and throw them in chat, and we'll ask him some of them. Highlighting them is the easiest way for us to get them through, but we'll try and keep an eye out for any of them that aren't highlighted as well. And the first question comes from Mr. Adam. That's Adam, who's in Conundrum Company, and he wants to know, what's the best moment you've had as a DM?
That's a big question, because best can be categorized in different ways, like the best funny moment, the best dramatic moment, the best I think the best emotional moment I've had as a DM with new players. So I play in my home game with my buddy Kyle, and for the longest time we were trying to get his wife and my girlfriend to all sit down at a table and play some Dungeons and Dragons, and we finally managed to get them to do it. So we're sitting down, maybe 4 or 5 sessions in. They're level 2, not very experienced, but Kyle's character, my friend's character, gets killed by a giant elk. The attempt was to try and grab one and use it as a mount of some sort, but he gets hooved and is killed, dropped below 0, and he fails all of his death saves. And the resurrection process, because they were close to a temple, and I run a kind of variant system of death and reincarnation, and it's like, okay, if they're early enough levels, I'll kind of let it slide to where it's like, okay, roll a d20 and we'll see how grievously injured you are.
Okay.
And he's pretty bad. He rolled a 2 or something like that. And I let his wife and my girlfriend roll empathy rolls. So they would roll a persuasion check to see if they could call him back. And they were in a Temple of the Raven Queen, and they were both my girlfriend's character did not roll very well, so she didn't really kind of get a moment. But his wife rolled really well, and his character was named Photos. He was a Triton cleric, and her character is Jezebel, a Furbolg ranger. And so the moment of her kind of going into this like ethereal dreamscape and like coming up to him, kind of chinking out the last dings in his armor for his last journey home. And she's just like, come back. Like we need you. We can't do this without you, you know? And cause he was kind of the goofy character that annoyed them. But in that moment they were like, oh no, like we can't lose you. And I leave it up to the players. Like, if you think that were your character to come back, I'll allow it. But he was like, no, he wants to go home. He wants to go back to the sea. And so he didn't listen. And they had a funeral, a little service, and they both cried. And I think that moment where I'm just kind of sitting there and I'm like, okay, this game is like having an effect on like brand new players, and it means something. It was like one of my favorite moments as a dungeon master.
That's such a mood, man, and such a good story as well. Like it really is. Those are the moments, right? Like when you see how invested your players become in it, or you see them light up or respond to something that has happened in the world of their own volition or of something you've done. Either way, it feels so. That's truly like the best part of DMing.
100%. And just seeing like, you know, where it was the hobby that they would kind of scoff at us at. You know, we're the two dudes sitting in the basement in the troll hole playing D&D, you know, like the epitome of nerdiness. And then just to have them like see what we're doing and kind of see that it does have this impact. And for it to kind of be so impactful on them was super cool for me to see.
Oh, that's awesome. I've got a couple more questions coming in here. We got some good ones. At what point, if any, do you think it's okay to take away agency as a DM / railroad the campaign?
That's always a slippery slope, right? Like wanting to kind of have your story and see, I even caught myself. It's not your story.
Mm-hmm.
It's the table's story. So finding ways for it to make, like if you're running a module, I think that's where it makes the most sense. If you're running a game of Curse of Strahd and you know that if your characters go to the werewolf dens, they're going to die because they're level 3 and it's not going to work out. So finding a way to kind of curb that and make the story work for everybody, it becomes too much when you're making it work for yourself. Because you want a story beat to happen or you want a certain choice to be made, that's when it's too much. But if it's for the service of the players truly, I think you can make an argument for kind of railroading or shunting a decision.
That's valid. It's a good answer.
But very slippery slope.
Yeah, it's dangerous. It's a dangerous game to play. I think the other thing that I think like DMs understand this a little more, and I'd be curious to your thoughts on this. My experience is the story exists around the players, and you've created encounters and worlds that they're going to encounter because you're responding to their existence in that story. So you're putting the track down in front of them as they go, but the tracks are being put down in the direction that they're pointing. Right, as a DM. So a lot of the time the railroading question is a unique thing that I find comes from a very player oriented perspective. Like, you know what I mean? Like a player feels like, and a DM usually is more, like I said, kind of railroading is not, when a DM is railroading, like when they've predefined a story arc for you, that is true railroading, and that really there's never any reason to do that.
Oh, 100%. I totally agree with that. Well, and I'm the kind of DM that really plays fast and loose with improv.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the choices I make and a lot of the things that my players do, they think I have originally planned, but it's like I play from the instance of I know who my NPCs are, I know who my villains are. I'll know what direction they're going to want to take this if it goes a certain way. So I kind of just let the moments happen organically, and I'll take time in that session or time after the session to kind of come to the conclusion of like, okay, here are the steps I'm going to take moving forward, and here's what I hope my players take away from that.
That's awesome.
I'm learning so much.
Ton of questions coming in.
Ooh.
You're learning things, Parker, for when you
Good.
DM a session for us.
For when I do that, yep.
Yes, Parker. Yes.
For when I do that, because I made a stupid promise
You're amazing.
while I was drinking.
Hey, that's okay.
Oh, only if you're ever comfortable, Parker. But I think you would be phenomenal at it.
I'll do it.
You hear that, chat? You hear that?
Parker's the end.
There is excitement.
I will be DMing at some point.
What's the going back to the question, sorry. Stopping trying to use my own motivations to get Parker to DM. Let's see. If you could play any monster in D&D, Alec, as a character, what would you play? I love this question.
A monster?
Yeah.
Oh.
And D&D has done that in the past where, like, you on T were a monster, and they were made
And now
into
they're...
a playable race. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Man, that's a really good question. If I could make a monster...
Oh, no.
Guys, you broke it.
You broke him.
No.
You took a nice
my
DM,
brain...
you broke him.
And you flubbed him up. I think my initial thought would be something like a Rakshasa. Just these kind of very charismatic and like magically inclined, but like vengeful things. Oh yeah, I think that would be super cool. I've had one Rakshasa NPC in my campaign, and it's just like just being that charismatic, but like inherently evil is just so great. Like I love it.
So you're an evil person, is what you're telling me. I'm kidding.
When I DM, yeah.
It was a secret.
Oh no.
Don't tell anyone.
When I DM, definitely.
That's a great question.
Yeah.
So what is the most off-center or unusual thing you chose to do as a dungeon master? So kind of going back to that like improv component, as a DM, that added to the game positively. Like what's that crazy moment where you're like, you know what, we're gonna do this?
Okay.
That laugh.
Something
My
came
players
to mind.
in their last session of us playing together, but before the plague, they were fighting a big collective of like dragon cultists who are all spellcasters, and it was a tough fight. They hired, so the party is 3 people. We have Garak Stonefist, a Goliath pugilist, a human paladin named Lester Lawson, a dragonborn wizard named Gunther Gizzard, the greatest kid lizard to ever wizard.
That name.
It's so good. And they hired 3 mercenaries, and they ended up fighting 7 casters. So it was a tough fight. All but one of the mercenaries had died, and Garak, the pugilist, is kind of looking at the table and how everything's going. It's just the big bad left, and he's like, "Okay, how far is that halfling mercenary away from me?" And I'm like, but probably about 25 feet. He's got like a 40 movement speed. It's like, okay, cool. He moves his movement speed right up to the halfling, picks him up. His character is built around grappling. I'm like, all right, make a grapple check. He absolutely succeeds because he's a monster.
Mm-hmm.
Picks it up. He's like, I'm going to throw this halfling at the villain. And I'm like, okay, yep, please do it. And I wanted to let it happen because the caster had like 16 hit points left. And sure as shit, he rolled 16 damage killed my villain by throwing a halfling at it.
Fling survive.
No. Yeah, so he had 2 hit points. He had 2 hit points, and the fall damage did it. So, but it worked out for them because they didn't have to. It worked out for them because they didn't have to pay the mercenaries after.
Oh my god! What a moment!
So, it worked out. But just like, it's usually goofy things like that where it's like, oh, they want to defeat my villain in a super goofy way, or something like that. But yeah, I love doing dumb stuff like that.
What is your what's your favorite character from any campaign that you have gotten to play? Like, what's your top? What's your like? Have you ever played in a full campaign, or has it always been one shots? I think is
it. I've attempted to play in Out of the Abyss, but like schedules just didn't work out because at the time I was working second shift, so I was working from like 2 p.m. to midnight every night, and I was only off Wednesdays and Thursdays, so I could never play with everybody.
Gotcha.
So I played like a session or 2 there. I think because I've been playing a game of Fate Core, which is another. It's a D6 based tabletop game that's very really based toward roleplay, and so the character there, his name is August Clark. We play in 1890s London. So he was a high society guy, but in Fate you have these concepts for your character. So for August, let me open up my notes quick. Sorry, everybody.
Oh, you're good.
Why questions?
So his high concept is down on his luck pugilist. His problem is anger issues, and his I forget what it's called, but his next thing is exiled from high society. So he was this affluent rich kid that he was supposed to get married to this rich American's daughter, but then they got into an argument and he broke the soon-to-be father-in-law's jaw and was quickly nixed from any part of high society life, and has been kind of like making his mainstay as a prize fighter. So, but like kind of going through his like emotional turmoil and like him coming to terms with like why he is so angry and why he does what he does. Like he's great. He's awesome.
That's a really cool concept to play with. I love that, like exploring that rage. That's
oh yeah, he's my first edgy boy.
Edgy boys.
So,
what's something you've done as a DM that you regret and would advise others to avoid?
Ooh,
that's a big question.
I think from my early experience as a dungeon master, giving my players too much. The first campaign that I ran fell apart in glorious fashion because I gave my players the deck of many things.
Okay.
And so one of the players drew the wish card, and his wish was to kill my BBEG of the entire campaign.
Ah, wonderful.
Which naturally derailed everything, and I tried to come up with logical story reasons to make the campaign still work, even though it didn't. So I think take the time. Let me rephrase that. I spent a lot of time early on in my career as a DM trying to give my characters the coolest moments without them earning it. So I would give them access to weapons that they shouldn't have, or armor that they couldn't carry because of like stat deficiency or their class, or the deck of many things. And I didn't let them earn those moments. And I think that's one thing that I really regret, because like being able to see that now and see my players really kind of earn those moments has been super cool.
That is fantastic DM advice. That is very, very good DM advice. You see a lot of people like, because rule of cool is very important, and you want your players to feel important and valid, but there has to be progression. Like there has to be, otherwise you're you're playing more of a one-shot scenario or a level 20 god scenario, which is fine if people sign up for that, but it's not kind of the traditional experience.
Yeah, definitely. Like it's not what you should be aiming for right off the bat, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like if your players are level 5, let them be level 5. Let them work their way up to feeling powerful, because then feeling powerful means something.
Yeah. Yeah. Very, very.
So that's definitely. Oh yeah.
What module would you recommend for a first-time dungeon master? Have you ever used
first-time
modules?
dungeon master.
Yeah, are you big module?
Yep, the first thing. No, not a big. I'm a huge homebrew kind of creator myself. I went from homebrew starting out as a DM, which I think you should, from my experience, you should always kind of start with a module. I think Lost Minds of Phandelver is great. I think it is a wonderful starting point. And then moving on to, if you're comfortable with, because all it comes down to is changing the name, right? If you want Phandelver to be in your homebrew world, call it something else. And then if you feel comfortable doing that, build it into your world after the fact. Don't do it beforehand. But yeah, I'd say Lost Minds is a great way to start, or look up one-shots on like DM's Guild. They have a lot of great initial beginner stuff on there, and kind of finding something that will make sense for you as a DM to run. They usually have DM guides for running it. But yeah, I'd say Lost Minds or something that has a natural beginning point. Because my first module that I did was Curse of Strahd, and that was a mistake. Because it's open world, it's very, yeah, you get it. it was a mistake. So yeah, that's what I'd say.
Phandelvar is a great one. I mean, it's designed for it, and it's a lot of fun, and it helps guide you through that kind of initial DMing process.
Or the new starter kit that came out not too long ago, the Icespire Peaks or whatnot.
Oh, I've heard it's really good. I haven't played it yet. Have you read it?
Neither have I, but I have not read through it, but I've heard very good things. So I think that would be, and the way that they've broken down, like, the adventure, what I've seen on, like, reviews, makes it look like it's very kind of user-friendly.
That's awesome. I'm all for user-friendly.
Heck yeah.
Sorry, Parker, this is turning into a bunch of DM questions, which...
I'm learning so much. There's a question here. Which tier of D&D combat exploration roleplay do you feel you lack in the most, and how do you think you can improve on it?
So I think when I was getting started, I leaned heavily toward like the role play and the character development side of it. In this campaign, I've gotten really comfortable with combat. I used to dread running combat just because it felt like it was so much, and I didn't know if I was doing combat that kept everybody engaged enough. But after like practice and doing it more, I've gotten way more comfortable. The thing I do need to get more comfortable with is the travel mechanic and letting them discover things on their own. Because the way I kind of been running my games is like you go from, I really like to lay in plot hooks. So it's like if you go somewhere, there are usually like 2 or 3 other plot hooks that you can follow if you want, so that there's always a well of content to have. So I think just letting them kind of sit and almost relax, I guess, is kind of what I would focus on. But yeah, that's a great question.
And you kind of touched like movement and downtime is a tricky thing to wrangle for.
Oh yeah.
For dungeon masters, like how do you handle that? That's really insightful. I think we have time for like one more question, and there is one highlighted here. And that question is, do you prefer using minis, grids, and maps, or more theater of the mind? Or is there a balance that you prefer?
So at my table, my buddy Kyle is a very good woodworker. So he built us a table with a TV inlay. So I like having the map there and we can play music out of the TV, and it's music, or it's minis and maps all the way. Because I think that because in Fate we do theater of the mind because there's no real like movement system or anything like that, like there isn't. So I think that after doing both, like I really have come to appreciate the map and mini model.
There's something really satisfying about seeing minis on a tabletop as well.
Oh, 100%.
Especially when they're all painted up and stuff like
100%.
that. There's a feeling to
And
that.
this, yeah.
Right. Well,
this has definitely got me doing that.
Are you ready to go back to seeing people so you can put a mini on a... How are they looking? Let's close out by seeing everyone's progress.
Parker, you go first.
Okay.
Okay.
Looks like this.
Oh, it's looking so good.
That does look great.
Doing the words, they call it something weird. It's a wash.
Are you
Doing that
the
already.
Wash? Yeah, the wash.
Hmm.
Wash, shade, same thing.
Wash shade, doing that deal on his wings.
Oh, that's awesome. What color is it? Is it the same kind of darkish blue shade?
Yeah. Yeah, I bought the blue dragon because I already had all the paint for it.
Because you were ready to go.
I already had all the paint for the blue dragon.
I'll show you where I am. It's looking a little greasy right now because the shades are drying and beginning to cool. And we'll go back over it, but you can start to see kind of the wear and tear. I didn't get the other side done, but that's just it's getting started.
Exciting.
Right. Alec, let's see Dritz.
All right, so we got the cape done. I started to do the boots and everything,
Oh.
and then you got
Yeah.
harsh.
Oh,
So-
look at, you got a lot done.
Yeah, I got the skin tone on there, and then yeah,
Wow.
Good.
Well,
I was pretty
what did you learn today?
all right.
Yeah, you pretty
I
pleased.
learned that I like painting minis. Yeah.
We
Yeah,
did it!
you're right.
Yes.
It's done. It is completed.
That's okay. So you need to send us pics when you get it all done, and maybe we can like put it on
Yeah.
Instagram or something for everybody.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be working on this for the next couple days, getting it nice and pretty.
Well, thank you
Heck yeah.
everyone who came out to watch us paint minis and hang out with us. Thank you, Commune, for joining us. You want to just
Thank
throw
you so
out
much.
your social handles and all that one more time, and any projects you're working on?
Yeah, so you can catch us on Instagram at commune_podcast. We're fairly frequent on that. You can find it, the podcast Commune, the DM's Essentials Kit, anywhere you listen to your podcasts. We're working on getting the latter half of our finale done. My microphone shit the bed, so I'm getting a new one delivered. So we're going to make that work. And then, yeah, please tune in Sunday for the Madhouse of Tasha's Kiss. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Oh, I'm excited.
Thank you for having me.
It's been a delight, man. And thank you for working with us, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, 100%. 100%.
The next Highlight Heroes will be in 2 weeks. I am very excited to announce that we're going to have iSnap Plastic joining us, who's a very big mini painter and gunpla modeler. So please tune in with us in 2 weeks for that. And we're going to head out. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.